You are listening to Eat Meat Sparingly, a Word of Wisdom podcast. I am your host, Ali Essig. Before I start the podcast today, I want to remind you that I will be speaking at Restore this year. Restore will be held September 26th and the 27th at UVU in Orem, Utah. It is a Faith Matters gathering where over 5,000 to 6,000 people gather together to hear inspiring speakers, listen to beautiful music, and see faithful art. I'm so excited and I hope to see you there. Feel free to use the code PlantWhys, PlantWhys, to save 10% on your ticket. This week's podcast is a rare and unique opportunity. In the PlantWhys membership, we have a book club. Every month we read a different book, and last month we read the book Mastering Diabetes. And because I had become friends with Dr. Cyrus Khambatta after we went on the holistic holiday at sea together, I thought it would be cool to invite him to come to our book club. And he came. It was amazing. The members in the PlantWhys membership were able to ask him specific questions about their blood sugar, what they need to do to improve their health. And it was such an inspiring and powerful book club that I decided that I was going to post it on the podcast. I didn't want to gatekeep this information because I truly think that it can save lives. He simplifies health and makes it feel doable, how you can follow a plant-based diet and manage your blood sugar and improve your cholesterol and do it in a way where you have more energy. There's a couple tricks to the trade. I've noticed that as people eat plant-based, they're not necessarily guaranteed to lose weight or even improve their blood sugar. It does help, but unless you follow these specific tips that he gives you, it can be more difficult. And so make sure to listen all the way through. Even if you heard the previous podcast he was on when I interviewed him for my podcast, he goes deeper. He gets into the nitty-gritty details. He shows us exactly what he eats to make this manageable. It is so powerful, and I can't wait for you to listen. All right, and without further ado, let's listen to the PlantWhys Book Club recording with Dr. Cyrus Khambatta. All right, PlantWhys, we get such an amazing opportunity to not only learn about the book Mastering Diabetes and read it together as a book club, but to have Dr. Cyrus Khambatta come speak to us. And he is co-author to the book Mastering Diabetes. It's a New York Times bestselling author, and I will never forget when my husband had a stroke and we went plant-based and I was reading all the things. I was reading all the books about everything. And that was my biggest question. People would ask, but what if you are diabetic? What if you're trying to manage your blood sugar? Aren't you supposed to avoid starches? And that's what I thought. I thought that's what you had to do. And so I was lucky. That was right. When did the book actually come out? What year?
2020, like February, right before the pandemic.
Yeah, literally, because my husband had a stroke October 2019. And I read it within, it was right after it came out.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah. And I was just amazed at all of the knowledge. I was like, a plant-based diet has the answers for everything. That was kind of my last straw. And you guys both did such a really amazing job of explaining the process, telling your story. And so I would love to go over just a general overview of that. But first, before we can go in detail, and that's because I don't want to forget. And that is that I was actually talking to one of our members. She had high cholesterol and she was like, what do I do? I'm following a plant-based diet and I have high cholesterol. I'm like, well, are you eating Amla? And so are you taking Amla? This is Amla powder in general. You can get any Amla powder on Amazon. The problem is it tastes really gross. And Cyrus, how did you even come up with this version of Amla?
Great question. Okay, so let's go back in time. The year was like 2000 and I would say 2016, something like that.
Yeah.
I had already spent the better part of maybe like 13 years or so studying nutrition inside and out. And you know how it is. It's a black hole. You can learn everything about everything and you still have scratched the surface, right? So 13 years into the process, I was like, okay, cool. I feel like I know some stuff, but I also know that I don't know most stuff. And then I watched a Dr. Greger video about this stuff called Amla berries. And I was like, I've heard of Amla berries. I know Amla berries. Like my parents are from India and Amla is used in Ayurvedic medicine. And Amla is basically just the Hindi word for Indian gooseberries. So I clicked into the video and I started watching it and it was about Amla berries and cholesterol. And as I was looking at the research, I was like, that's fascinating. So then I clicked onto the next one about Amla and I read it was about Amla lowering blood glucose. And I was like, that's fascinating. And then I started looking into the research and I was like, how come nobody talks about this stuff? There's a lot of stuff here. So I started delving into the research and I got deeper and deeper and deeper. And at a certain point I was like, you've got to be kidding me. This is the most powerful cholesterol reducing food in the world. literally the single most powerful cholesterol reducing food in the world. And yet nobody knows. Like, this is some weird secret that people just aren't talking about, aren't educated about. And I was like, it's also one of the most powerful blood glucose reducing foods in the world. Well, that's kind of crazy. And it's the single most powerful antioxidant ever discovered by humans. What? Right? So then I started reading everything I possibly could about it. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. So the next thing I did was I went to the local Indian market, because that's where you find amla. They have amla in all different forms. They got juices, they got frozen amla, freeze-dried amla powder. They have dehydrated amla, like every different possible combination you can think of. So I was like, I'll buy one of these, buy one of these, one of these. And I brought them home and I started tasting them. And I was like, oh, good God. I was like, this is why nobody talks about this stuff. This stuff is horrendous. It's too much. It's way too sour. Like, just that you put something sour in your mouth and all of a sudden you like pucker up. This is like that times 10, to the point where like it almost made me gag at how disgusting it was. And I was like, oh, now I get it. This is why nobody cares about this stuff, because it's impalatable. This is ridiculous. So then I was like still holding strong, and I was like, maybe the juice is better. And I drank a little bit of juice and I was like, good Lord, this stuff is disgusting, right? No matter what I tried, it was terrible. I teamed up with Kylie, my wife, Kylie Buckner. And her and me, plus two good friends of ours, like another couple, we all went to Chinatown one day, and we were like, all right, let's try and find something that we could combine amla berries with in order to make them taste less gross. So we were walking all through Chinatown, and we were looking for like herbs and spices and anything we could possibly find. And we stumbled across this store of this guy who was like the tea guru. This guy had a small store, but he had a wall of teas behind him with, I kid you not, there were probably like 300 different little containers that all had slightly different colors of tea in them.
Wow.
Like, oh, wow. What do we have here? So we literally like took the amla berry. We're like, here you go. This is what we're trying to mask the flavor of. Do you have any ideas? And he was like, no, I have no ideas, but why don't you try this? So he gave us a whole bunch of different flavors of tea. And then he was explaining to us that maybe the tannins in this one might do this, and that the sour bitterness might go away with this. And so we just collected a whole bunch of these things and then went back home. So go back home, and then I'm playing like chemistry experiment inside of my kitchen. And I'm like, okay, what if we take the amla berry, we mix it with a little bit of this, and then I would drink it. And I was like, no, that's terrible. And then I would mix it with something else and something else and something else. And then before we knew it, all of a sudden, the one tea leaf that actually did cut the flavor almost completely was the oolong green tea leaf.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, the oolong tea leaf, when you combine it with the amla berries, all of a sudden you drank it and you were like, whoa, okay, now this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So we did a little bit further work and had to do more formulation just to make sure that we had the right amount of amla berries and the right amount of oolong. And then that was literally flavor number one. That was it right there. Then from that point onwards, we created a brand called Amla Green, and then we started selling different flavors, and we started selling a hibiscus flavor with mint and cinnamon and ginger. And then we created a different one that's got elderberries inside of it and beyond. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you like the elderberry flavor the most. Is that right?
Yeah. Every day, every morning, I'm like, this is the one. I like elderberry and hibiscus, and I do have pumpkin, but I just save pumpkin for the fall.
Sure.
But I wanted to show people, because you can get this, like I said, you can get amla and then a lot of people do it, just organic amla powder on Amazon, but it's going to taste nasty. But this actually tastes really good. And if you buy it on Amazon, on Amla Green on Amazon, it's this size, but for the same price, you can buy it through this link. I'm just going to put it in the chat right there.
Yeah,
you can get a bigger bottle. This is 90 servings. This is 30 servings. So anyway, if you are committed like I am, I'm all about this. This stuff is amazing. And I have not gotten sick, like fingers crossed, literally since I started drinking it every day. I will even feel sickness coming on, and I have tons of energy. Anyway, I can promote this all day long. I love it.
That's great. I'm really glad to hear that you like it that much. Here, let me just share my screen here for 1 second.
Yeah.
Because so we originally started this brand as like a tea powder. That's kind of what we refer to it as, because this is the green tea version. That's the green bottle. But since that time, we actually went on to make multiple different flavors plus a coffee, right? So now, effectively, if anybody's interested in this stuff, by all means, just let us know. But point being is that we have multiple different flavors, right? So we have the green tea version, which is the green, then we have the elderberry, then we have the hibiscus, and then the pumpkin spice as well. And if any of you are coffee drinkers, I think you're going to be excited. Here we go. So these are the different flavors right here, okay, as you can see on the screen. And if you are a coffee drinker, then the coffee is actually, I think, probably our best tasting product. People go nuts over this coffee. Kylie's like, I don't know about that, but this Coffee right here is basically just a combination. It's literally all it is Arabica coffee beans from Central South America blended with the berry. And the combination of two of them, the guy that helped us formulate this, I think he did a masterful job. And this is actually a very, very, very solid, another very powerful metabolic formula. So for anybody who's looking to lower their blood pressure, their cholesterol, or their blood glucose, this stuff is way more powerful, honestly, way more powerful than I ever thought it would be. That's
cool.
Good stuff.
And just to clarify, because I know people are always asking, there's no caffeine in the hibiscus, the pumpkin, and the gooseberry, the elderberry.
Correct. Yeah. The only thing that has caffeine is the coffee plus the green bottle. That's it.
Yeah.
So all other non-green bottles are caffeine free.
Perfect. Awesome. I didn't want to forget. Oh yeah. Is it okay to have Amla green while pregnant? Great question.
Yeah. So that's a great question. There is not a single human being for which Amla berry is contraindicated. You can feed it to a child. You can feed it to a toddler. You can feed it to a pregnant woman. You can feed it to somebody who's elderly. You can feed it to a man, a woman, anything, literally nothing. And the one thing that I have also looked for in the research is like, show me the side effects. What are the side effects? There has to be some side effects go along with this. And the research shows over and over and over again that the worst side effect is literally a sour flavor. Crazy.
Wow. Which you took care of. So there's no side effect. That's amazing.
Yeah, I tried to at least.
That's amazing. So cool. I love that. Okay. What if someone already has low blood pressure? That's a great question too.
Oh, great question. Okay. So the answer is it doesn't matter. So there's this term that people give to specific types of plants that are referred to as adaptogens. Maybe you guys have heard that term before. I do not like that word. I try to use that word as little as possible. The concept of an adaptogen is basically that the plant will adapt to you. Okay. So wow. I don't want you to think that like this plant has a brain and the plant can like somehow detect what's happening inside of you, because that's not really the way it works. But effectively, if you already have low or in range blood pressure, blood glucose, and cholesterol, that is okay. This is not going to make it go abnormally low. Okay. And I wish I knew the biological mechanism, because it doesn't seem logical that a plant would be able to figure this out. But we've seen this over and over and over again with thousands of people that have like in range biomarkers to begin with. They take this stuff and all of a sudden they're like, well, like it's just great. Everything stays in range. I'm not going hypoglycemic or hypo. My cholesterol's not too low and my blood pressure's not too low. I wouldn't worry about that.
And then someone just asked, my mother-in-law is on blood thinner medication and asked about taking Amla powder, and her doctor told her it would interfere with the blood thinner and wouldn't be safe. Is that true?
Not so sure about that. Blood thinner medication. So tell me, what is the name of the blood thinner medication, if you wouldn't mind? I have never seen that before, never heard that before. I'm not going to say it's not necessarily true, but that's the first time I've ever heard that. So just give me the name of the blood pressure medication. The blood thinner. And then I can do a little bit of research in the background just to quadruple check that I'm not making anything up.
Awesome. Well, if you have other questions about Amla, feel free to leave it in the chat. But I do want to go into mastering diabetes, since this is our book club topic.
For sure.
And I would love just a general overview. Like, why did you decide to write it? What, and I've shared this on my podcast before, but I loved meeting Kylie, your wife, and she told me the story of when you guys met and on your first date and how you wanted to share with the world the truth about diabetes. And so how did this book, and just kind of the background, how did it even come about? Why did you guys decide to do it? And any background information you could give us would be amazing. But stuff that's like, not in the book.
Yeah, for sure. Real quick, is it possible that we could get people to turn their cameras on so we can?
Yeah. Yes, guys, turn your cameras on so we can.
I'd love to see this. Turn the cameras on, turn the microphones on. Let's make it fun.
I like it.
There we go. What's up, Carla? Hope. How you guys doing?
Hi.
There's real people here. They're not just a bunch of robots.
No robots.
Cool. Okay. Have you ever been in one of those Zoom meetings where there's more AI note takers than there are people?
Oh my gosh.
That's my favorite.
That's funny.
Okay. So what was the inspiration? Okay. Let's go backwards in time. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the year 2002. So I was graduating from college and I just kind of wanted to move on with my life and get a job and just contribute to the workforce. But all of a sudden I get diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, Hashimoto's hypothyroidism, and alopecia. And I was like, whoops, what did I do? So it took the better part of a year. Like, I had no answers at that time. I literally had no idea. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just listening to the Western medicine principles of eating a low carbohydrate diet. I was like, cool, sweet. You're telling me I get to eat more meat and more fish and more chicken and more turkey burgers and more dairy and more ice cream? Sign me up. This is the greatest disease of all time. I can't wait. So I did that. And after about a year of doing that, somewhere like 10 months, a year, something, I literally was like, oh my God, I feel so bad right now. Like my blood glucose is impossible to control. My insulin use is going up and up and up and up every single week and month. And I feel terrible. Like I'm telling you, I'd wake up in the morning. I kid you not. I would wake up in the morning after like 9 hours of deep sleep. And the first thought in my head was, damn it, awake. Sleep
Wow.
is so much less painful. And it was so much less physically painful because my muscles were tight and this like anxiety was creeping over me about the fact that I felt like an old man inside my body at the age of 22. And I was like, oh my God, this sucks. So I switched over to eating a plant-based diet, right? Of a gentleman named Doug Graham. And he's basically wrote a book called the 80-10-10 book. And he teaches people how to eat a raw food diet, literally raw food, fruits and vegetables. That's it. No beans, no lentils, no peas, no whole grains, no potatoes, no starches, nothing cooked, just literally fruits and vegetables uncooked. And I was like, sounds good. I don't really care. Just please make me feel less crappy. So I went to a health retreat with him for 7 days. And while I was there, he literally sat me down on the first day and he was like, welcome to your new life. And I was like, what? And he's like, over the course of the next 7 days, while you're here with me, you're going to experience something profound and it's going to be life-changing. And I was like, awesome. He's like, you're taking insulin, correct? And I said, yeah. He's like, you're going to have to back off on the amount of insulin you're using significantly. I want you to be very, very detail oriented about this because you can go so dangerously hypoglycemic eating this way that it can become very dangerous. So please be on the lookout. And I said, yes, you got it. And he was absolutely right. Over the course of 7 days, my glucose fell so hard. I can't even tell you. My glucose went from like averaging 180, 190, 200 on a daily basis at any given moment in time to all of a sudden just like, boom, way below 70, like 60s, 50s, 40s. And I was like, whoa, I wake up in the middle of the night and I was like shaking because I was like so hypoglycemic. So I'd have to drink a bunch of orange juice and get myself back to, being normal glycemic. And so what that taught me over the course of a 7-day period was that my blood glucose was coming down so much, I had to reduce my insulin usage significantly. Okay. I dropped my insulin use by like 35% in 1 week, which is a very large number for someone with type 1 diabetes, very large number. But the kicker was that I wasn't restricting my carbohydrate intake because that's what the traditional medical world tells you, right? Less carbohydrate means less insulin. Therefore, more carbohydrate should mean more insulin, right? That was the canonical wisdom going into it. But what I ended up doing was I went from eating like 100 grams of carbohydrate to 600 grams of carbohydrate per day. I 6x'd my carbohydrate intake and my insulin use fell down by 35%. And so I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I'm not an expert in human biology, anything, but something fascinating is happening right here. And this is exactly the opposite of what I am being told is the truth. And then Doug Graham came up to me and he's like, welcome to a world which very few people understand the answer to.
Wow.
Welcome to a world which is like so fascinating that you are going to have an opportunity to like hopefully teach other people how to do this. And I was like, wow, this is mind blowing. So to answer your question, the reason I'm telling this story is because I felt so dramatically better in such a short period of time. And not only was my blood glucose easier to control, not only was my insulin use down, but my energy levels just like literally skyrocketed. I went from being lethargic all day long and being like, darn it, I'm up. Why am I up? My muscles hurt. My joints hurt. This sucks. To literally waking up in the morning. And I kid you not, I felt like I was an overslept puppy. I'd wake up and I was like, my tail was wagging and I was like, all right, let's go. So I would put on my running shoes and I would bolt out the door. I went and I bought a road bike, joined a team and ended up doing this thing called the Death Ride, which is a 120-mile bike ride that climbs 16,000 feet. I had to train for 6 months. I joined a team and I need to get my energy. It was such a prominent transformation within my own personal experience that going through that motivated me to go back to school. I got the personal experience. This is incredible. I feel like $1,000,000. I'm a year into it. I'm 2 years into it. I was like, wow, give me the science. Now I'm hungry for the science. So I started reading everything under the sun. And then I applied to a PhD in this subject. I applied to a bunch of schools. I got into Berkeley, thirsty. I was information. That was my opportunity to go deep, deep, deep into the research. And I started uncovering all these scientific papers from like 1972, 1955, 1931. And I was like, wait a minute. Are you telling me that we have known the answer? Literally, this stuff is described in exquisite detail, dating back to the 1930s. And I was like, it's not just one paper. It's not just one research team. It's multiple different research teams repeating over and over and over again, citing one another, saying the work of Rabinowitz said this, and the work of Inder Singh said this, and the work of blah, blah, blah said this. And then it was just building on top of each other. And it got to 1955, and it was even stronger. Then 1970, even stronger. 1990, and I was like, there's like 40, 50 different research papers here that all confirm the exact same thing, which is exactly the experience that I had. But the thing was that information is buried, or at least was buried back in 2017. Truth be told, it still is buried because the world still doesn't understand it. So I took it upon myself when I graduated from grad school to say, all right, maybe I can try and teach the world the truth. That's where it came from. So when I met Kylie the first time when I was at a party and we were sitting there having a conversation about everything, she told me she's a nurse. And I was like, oh, wow, tell me about your nursing background. So we kind of got geeked out on that for a while. She said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, I want to tell the world the truth about diabetes. And she was like, oh, wow, those are big shoes to fill. And I was like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I have not the faintest clue, but I'm just going to start. And then that was the origin of me trying to find a way to get the word out. And then before I knew it, all of a sudden, there were people who were like, oh my God, this is working. The last thing I'll say too is that at the very beginning of this process, I just wanted to work with people. And I was like, I didn't know how much money to charge. I didn't have a business. I literally was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. So I told some friends that I was doing this. And one of my friends from elementary school, I grew up with her from kindergarten all the way through the end of high school. Her name is Emily. And she picked up the phone. She called me. She's like, hey, my dad just got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Do you think you can help him out? And I was like, yes, 100%. So I drove down to Palo Alto. I hung out with him. I sat in his house and I started like learning a little bit more about him. And I was like, all right, here's what we're going to do. And I created a program on the fly for him. And I was like, all right, this amount of exercise and this amount of these types of foods, and we're going to eliminate these and we're going to integrate these. And within 2 months, this guy was like a completely different human being. It was so quick. It was almost like, it felt like it was too easy. And so I saw that happen in him. And then I saw that happen again in a couple other people, and then again, and then again, and then again. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wow, this actually does work in real life as well. It's in the research. I felt it. I can now apply it to other people. Maybe we could actually turn this into something that could be a lot bigger, that can hopefully affect thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people's lives.
Right. And then the key, and obviously most of us have read the book, but the key points that I want to get brought out, because I know as I'm working with clients going through this and telling them what to do, sometimes they get lost in, okay, but I'm supposed to eat this for breakfast. But really the key takeaway I felt like from mastering diabetes was no more than 30 grams of fat a day, and you can manage your blood sugar spikes. But what am I missing? What else really was like the biggest takeaway? If you were just to boil it down in just a couple of points, like if you want to manage diabetes, like you need to make sure to do A, B, C.
Yeah, great questions. Okay. I'll try and boil it down to 3 or 4 bullet points if possible. Okay. Number 1, the amount of fat that you consume in your diet absolutely matters. In fact, the amount of fat that's in your diet is the single most important variable in controlling your blood glucose. Okay. Most people think it's all about carbohydrates and it's all about sugar. Okay. You go on the street, you ask 100 different people, what causes diabetes? What causes your blood glucose to go up? Sugar, carbs, bread, sugar, carbs, sugar. Okay. That's what the marketing world wants you to believe. Okay. That stuff definitely does matter, but it is secondary to the primary variable. And the primary variable is fat. So to your point, yes, if you can lower your total fat intake, okay, from whatever number it's at, you're going to have to do some diet logging, figure out, is it at 40 grams? Is it at 300 grams? Is it at 152 grams? Do some diet logging, figure out what is the number of grams that you are putting into your mouth in just pure total fat. And that's both saturated plus unsaturated fat together. Bring that number down to as close to 30 as possible. When you cross the threshold of like from 35 down to 30, something magical happens. I still don't know what it is. I cannot fully explain it. And I don't think I ever will be able to explain it. But there's a difference between 40 grams of fat and 30 grams of fat, and it is noticeable. Okay. So you get to 30 grams of fat per day and you keep that constant over the course of 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 8 weeks. Just watch. Your glucose will plummet. Okay. So that's number 1. So total fat matters. Number 2, saturated fat is the single most problematic nutrient in the human diet. I'll repeat that. Saturated fat is the single most problematic nutrient in the diet of all human beings that have ever lived from the beginning of time until the end of time. Okay. No matter what you hear on the internet, no matter what people tell you, that coconuts are good and saturated fat is fine and don't worry about it. You can have as much ghee and as much oil as you want. Please don't believe the hype. Saturated fat has such a bad track record at not only initiating the insulin resistance mechanism, but also in promoting the development of arterial, but also in elevating LDL cholesterol, and also elevating your risk for hypertension, and also increasing your risk for dementia 30 to 50 years in the future. Okay, the track record on saturated fat is so bad that it is appalling that people still find ways to make it sexy. Okay. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3, all carbohydrate energy is not created equal. All right. I know you guys know this, and I know it may sound trivial for me to say there's a difference between eating whole carbohydrates and refined carbohydrates. But my Lord, it is still such a foggy concept for the general public. And it's, again, that's shocking to me that people just can't piece it all together, right? But people use this term, they say, carbs are bad for me. I hate carbs. I'm eating a low carb diet. Carbs are napalm. I shouldn't have carbs. I'm trying to avoid carbs. It's all about the carbs, right? Most people who say that have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm not trying to like rail on other people, but like the rhetoric is that when people say I'm eating a low carb diet, I go, oh, okay, cool. What types of carbohydrate are you trying to avoid? And they go, bread. And I'm like, okay, what else? Crackers. I'm like, awesome. What else? Potatoes. And I'm like, really? Potatoes? Why are potatoes bad for you? Oh, they're white. They're bad. It's starch. It's not good for you. Blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they go into a rabbit hole of telling you why like all carbohydrate is bad for you. But the truth is that there's such a fundamental difference between the way that a refined carbohydrate functions in your body versus a whole carbohydrate that I don't even think we should talk about them as though they are the same. They should literally be 2 separate categories of things, but yet somehow they're just united by the fact that they're both referred to as carbohydrates. Okay. The simplest way to think about it, or at least the analogy that I like to draw, is imagine I handed you a soccer ball that was a wire frame. Okay. So it was like chicken wire on the outside. Okay. And it was a spherical shape. Okay. And then I took that spherical shape and I started to put stuff inside of it. I started to pick up some leaves and I started to like stuff them inside. Then I took a little bit of dirt and threw it inside. Then I took some rocks and I threw it inside. And then I started to take some like pieces of, I don't know, maybe some pieces of banana and I threw it in there, or just like anything that you could find, any other objects, I could just like stuff it all in. Eventually you'd have this soccer ball that has a chicken wire frame on the outside, but has a whole bunch of other stuff on the inside. Okay. You guys with me on this one? Mm-hmm. Okay. That is actually what food is when you're eating whole foods. When you eat whole foods, you're actually eating 9 different classes of macro and micronutrients, 9 different classes of nutrients. You're eating carbohydrate, fat, protein, vitamins, minerals, fiber, water, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. Okay. I'll say that again. Carbohydrate, fat, protein, vitamins, minerals, fiber, water, antioxidants, and phytochemicals. Okay. So there's 9 different classes of things that we can put into this soccer ball. Okay. The structure of the soccer ball is this stuff called fiber. Okay. Fiber is literally rebar. It is the stuff that holds the soccer ball together, that gives it a shape, and it's non-digestible. You literally cannot break fiber using your own digestive enzymes. None of you can do it. I can't do it. Period. End of story. And the reason is because we do not manufacture the enzyme required to make cuts to that rebar structure. Okay. So the fiber on the outside is called cellulose, and cellulose is, technically speaking, a non-digestible nutrient for human beings. So in order to digest it, what you have to do is basically try and pass it further, as far down into your digestive system as you possibly can, and get your microbiome, the 38 trillion bacteria inside of your microbiome, to access it, because they make cellulase. And as soon as you give them fiber, all of a sudden they're like, cool, fiber. And then they start to cut it up and then start to use it for themselves. They start to replicate based off of that. And then they start to do a whole bunch of really positive things for you as a human. Okay. So that's a symbiotic relationship between us and them. Point being, the rebar is the fiber. And then all of the other stuff, if we were to just magically rip this rebar open and look on the inside, that's where we would find the carbohydrate, the fat, the protein, the vitamins, the minerals, the water, the antioxidants, and the phytochemicals. And it all would be in a soup. Okay. So when you eat food, whole food, you're eating the soccer ball that's got that wire structure on it. It goes all the way down inside of your stomach. It starts to get acted upon, starts to get denatured, starts to get linearized. And then by the time it gets to your small intestine has a ridiculous job of going inside that rebar structure and trying to pull things out of it and be like, oh, I want that, I want that, I want that, I want that. And it's trying to suck out everything from it. And then it's going to pass the rebar further down into your large intestine so that your microbiome can go feed off of it. And then when your microbiome feeds off of it, it's like, I got what I'm looking for. And then your upper digestive tract has what it needs. Your lower digestive tract has what it needs. And that's the benefit of eating a whole food, because it can feed multiple parts of your digestive tract. Okay. If you contrast that with something like table sugar, okay, table sugar has carbohydrate, because that's what the glucose and fructose are there for. They're carbohydrate, but it has zero protein, zero fat, zero vitamins, zero minerals, zero water, zero fiber, zero phytochemicals, and zero antioxidants. Okay, so it's 1 for 9. If you eat a cracker, the cracker's been probably hyper processed. It's got carbohydrate, maybe a little bit of fat, maybe a little bit of protein. Vitamins, probably not. Minerals, probably not. Maybe a very tiny little bit. Fiber, kind of maybe a little bit. Water, almost none. Antioxidants, good luck. Phytochemicals, good luck. So maybe a cracker is like 3 for 9 or 4 for 9, right? So you see what I'm saying? Whole foods are 9 for 9 every single time. But all these other foods that we're eating in the grocery store that come in fancy packages and bottles and cans, and they're grinded down into a powder, they're 1 for 9, 2 for 9, 3 for 9, 4 for 9. And so if we're expecting to get nutrient density from those foods, good luck. Good luck. You're just not going to get it. Okay. And the very last thing I'll say here about fiber is that not only does fiber become a food for the microbiome inside of your large intestine, but fiber is also the ultimate brake. And when I say brake, what I mean is that it just slows everything down. And that's a really good thing for you. Okay. So the analogy that I have here, the visual, is that imagine fiber is Santa Claus trying to get down your chimney. Okay. Your chimney has a flue, and the flue is not that large. Santa is a big boy. And Santa's like, all right, cool. I'm going to go deliver these presents. I'm going to get in the top of the chimney and I'm going to come down the chimney. Except Santa sometimes can get stuck, right? It's hard for him to go down because he's large and there's a mass associated with him. And the mass is basically making its way down a relatively small tube. The same type of thing happens inside of your small intestine. Okay, small intestine is not that large. And when you're eating a lot of fiber-rich material, the fiber-rich material is literally like rubbing against the sides, and it's trying to wiggle its way all the way through. And as a result of that, it forces the tube to actually have to increase in size. So the tube is like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff in here, and it increases in size. It's slow to go through. And because it's slow to go through, that means that your blood glucose is going to stay nice and controlled. You just can't get stuff out of it that quickly, right? It's hard to extract stuff from that rebar because it takes a lot of time, and that thing takes up a lot of space, right? So from a physical perspective, it also has a very important role. And then one thing that it also does is, because it distends your small intestine, it'll actually activate this thing called a GLP-1 mechanism. The GLP-1 is like, people are taking Ozempic and they're taking Wegovy and they're taking Mounjaro, because these are drugs that are trying to mimic the GLP-1 pathway. What the GLP-1 pathway literally is, I kid you not, is your small intestine has stuff in it. It picks up the phone, it calls your brain and is like, hey, there's stuff inside of me. Could you please not be so hungry? And then the brain goes, oh, cool. Sounds like a plan. And then it turns your appetite down. That's literally GLP-1 in a nutshell. Okay. So if the GLP-1 mechanism is working properly because you're eating fiber-rich food, your small intestine distends, neurological signal up to your brain goes, oh, sorry, got the signal, sounds like a plan. And then it decreases your appetite. Then you're like, no, I'm not hungry anymore. And you stop eating. That's how it's supposed to work. But when you're not eating fiber-rich food, or you're eating a very small amount of fiber-rich food, then you end up putting a lot of calories inside of you. And then you end up just fueling on overeating. And you don't get as much of a strong GLP-1 bidirectional communication between your gut and your brain. And then before you know it, all of a sudden you're like, that's weird. How did I put on 64 pounds? That doesn't make any sense. And a lot of it is just due to the fact that you're not really eating fiber-rich anything, and you've gotten this GLP-1 pathway to just kind of shut off.
So good. I love how your analogies just make sense.
Thank you.
So good. And this is a good question that Ashley said, keeping our fat low makes it hard to get nuts and seeds and things like flax seeds, chia seeds, which we know are really good for you. So do you still fit those in somehow? Should we worry about getting those? Like Dr. Greger's Daily Dozen is always a tablespoon of seed every day. How important is it that those are in our system? And then should everyone follow this type of eating of keeping fat low, or is this only for people who are diabetic?
Yeah, good question. Great question. Okay, so let's talk about chia seeds and flax seeds. And let me do this. I'm going to share my screen here because we can do a fun exercise together here. One second. Here we go. Okay. Have you guys ever used Chronometer before?
Yes.
Diet
I love
logging?
Chronometer.
Okay, awesome. So for the super nerds out there, when you use Chronometer, what you can do is basically, I don't really use it that often, but it's kind of fun to use every so often just to see what's going on. So if you were to take flax seeds and you were to say, all right, I'm going to eat 1 tablespoon of ground, I guess chopped is the answer, 1 tablespoon of chopped flax seeds, boom, you stick that in. What this tells you right here is that this has a total of 2.6 grams of fat. Okay. So the quota for the day is 30. That's what I'm suggesting. Okay. So you have basically you have a 30-gram cup and you just put 2.6 grams of fat into it. As far as I'm concerned, it's close to zero. Like it's such a small number that they're not even worried about. Okay. Same thing with chia. If you put chia seeds in and you said, I want 1 tablespoon of, I guess whole pieces here, 1 tablespoon of whole pieces. Okay, the combination of the two of those would get you 5.7 grams of fat for the day, right? So technically speaking, you still have plenty of room. You still have another 25 grams or so of fat that you can be eating from other foods, okay? If you want to put 1 tablespoon of flax or chia into your diet on a daily basis, I strongly recommend. I think it's a fantastic idea. It's part of Greger's Daily Dozen. There's plenty of research that demonstrates that it's a very powerful it's a small thing that can go a very long way. So do it. You don't necessarily have to have both. You could have one or the other, but if you choose that you want to have a higher omega-3 intake for the day, great, put both in and you're still in a good position. Okay. Then from that point onwards, when you go and you consume other foods, there's going to be more fat content inside of soybeans and a little bit more inside of tempeh and then a little bit more inside of quinoa and so on and so forth. Using something like Chronometer can help you just kind of keep track of everything because the math gets confusing, right? So I don't know if that answered the question, but include them for sure. Now, when it comes to something like avocados can be a little bit higher fat content, but it doesn't mean you have to avoid them altogether. So let me ditch that. I'll get rid of flax too. And if I were to put in avocado here and I say, let's do a black skin avocado and what's a reasonable amount of avocado to eat here?
I force an avocado, which is about, I don't know.
Maybe let's do it in tablespoons. What if we ate, 3 tablespoons of avocado? Is that too little?
No, that sounds about right.
Okay. 3 tablespoons of avocado basically gives you 4 grams of fat, right? So maybe let's do more. How do I do that? Let's say I did 5 just for funsies. Okay. So now we're at 7.2. So you're still within your quota, right? Again, this is just one food in isolation. But if you were to assemble a diet containing a whole bunch of other foods, you could still certainly keep it under 30 relatively easily. So I just kind of logged a day for funsies just to show you the types of things that I'm eating, right? So I start the day with a lot of fruits, and then I'll put in a smoothie bowl every so often, and then I'll have garbanzo beans, tofu, green potatoes for dinner or something like that. My macronutrients for the day are usually somewhere around 3,000, 3,200 or so. And despite that, my fat intake on this particular day is 40 grams, all right? So I'm not even following my own rule on this day. So let's see what happened, what went wrong. This is why. I put in an acai bowl, right? And then it basically was like, oh, an acai bowl has Greek yogurt in it, which is not true because I would never eat that, right? So it's basically just putting together what it believes an acai bowl to be. So the easiest thing for me to do is just get rid of that acai bowl because it's not what I would actually eat. And I would substitute it with other foods. I would actually put the ingredients in the acai bowl in there. But long story short, you can see that took out 20 grams of fat. I would never have a single acai bowl with 20 grams of fat. Long story short, you can still eat 2,900 calories here for 20 grams of fat, okay? And even if I were to add in that avocado, just again, if I wanted to have some, because I was feeling frisky, I could put in 5 tablespoons right there, and then boom, I'm still at 28 grams for the day. Make sense?
And you got to 90 grams of protein, which in our membership, we talk about getting adequate protein. And that's always the hard thing. It's like, how do you get enough protein and keep the fat low? But you're eating beans. I saw a complement protein powder, and that's really it. And it still got to 90. Green peas.
Yeah. So truth be told, okay, when I put in these garbanzo beans, it said, how many ounces do you want? And I was like, I don't know ounces because I know cans. I usually eat 2 to 3 cans of garbanzo beans per day.
Wow.
So How many ounces are in a can? Is it 8 ounces in a can?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
Maybe we could look that up here. Let's just do that for fun.
How do you eat that many garbanzo beans? What are you eating? It just raw, like just out of the can, or do you eat it in a recipe?
You want to know the truth?
Yes.
I eat them straight out of the can. Yeah, because I'm lazy sometimes. So
That's amazing.
I'll literally open the can and I will just put it into my mouth. Okay, there we go. Net weight 15 ounces for that can. Okay, and this one says net weight 16 ounces. Okay, so I made another mistake. Let's go back here. Garbanzo beans. I am eating, stop, come on. I'm eating 24 ounces. Sometimes I eat more than that. So let's call it 30
But
ounces.
isn't that the weight before it's strained?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point because it has the liquid in there. Okay, cool. Sweet. Good call. So let's drop that down. Let's say I eat 20 ounces for funsies. Okay. So truth be told, I target about 120 grams of protein per day. So you can see that number is there's a little bit of wiggle room in all these foods because sometimes the diet logging isn't 100% accurate. But the general trend here, to your point, Allie, is yeah, you can definitely get an adequate amount of protein. For full disclosure, when I was eating an 80-10-10 diet, I was not getting anywhere near this amount of protein. And I've had to actually educate myself about the fact that protein is not bad. I used to be of the camp that like protein is bad for us. And too much protein can cause metabolic issues. But then I started to learn that there's a fundamental difference between animal protein and plant protein. And when I learned that, I was like, oh my God, game changer. And then it gave me a green light to increase my protein intake. I have increased my protein intake significantly over the past year. And I feel fantastic. And I've been able to put on a couple of pounds. And I've been able to perform at the gym even better and recover even better. So it's a win-win-win for 1,000 reasons. What are the foods that are contributing to this? We click into here and you can see mainly the garbanzo beans. Then I got complement protein powder, which I eat on a daily basis. So there's 30 grams right there. And then there's just kind of like a little bit from all the rest of the stuff here. One thing that we don't see in this diet log is actually quinoa, because I do love eating quinoa. It's not uncommon for me to be eating something like 2.5 cups of quinoa per day. So if we were to put that in there and then look at protein, we would see that my quinoa right here adds 20 grams of protein right there, right? So there's definitely ways to get it in. And I realize that like the amount of this stuff that I'm eating seems a little bit much, but I do have a big appetite and I do tend to eat a lot.
But even for us women, we're probably eating half as many calories, but our goal is at least to get to 60 grams. And so it shows that it's doable and you don't have to eat a ton of tofu to do it, especially if you're keeping your fat down. And with that, people are asking, when you're keeping your fat down, you're counting the fat in foods like oatmeal and other fruits, right? Like it's the total fat.
It's total fat. So you can see here, this is total fat intake for the day. And it's at 42.9 because I've now overeaten for the day. I don't actually eat this much, but yeah, it's total fat, which is a summation of all of the foods that you've eaten throughout the day.
And then another question is, how long after someone has been eating more of a mastering diabetes plan would you think the fatigue from diabetes would go away? It might be different for everyone, but how soon does your blood sugar stabilize too? I've worked with clients where I'm surprised how fast it can be. It's just like a day or two. But what have you seen, or how long does it take to feel good again?
Great question. Okay, here's what I would suggest. Even though I made a quick transition and I've worked with some people who are like, have the soldier mentality of like, cool, I need this problem solved tomorrow. Let's do it. I actually don't recommend it. And the reason for that is because it's so effective that if you are living in a high glucose environment, let's say your average blood glucose, you wake up in the morning and it's at 162. And then all throughout the day, your blood glucose is ranging between 140 and 190. It's relatively elevated. If you switch over overnight and start eating this way, your blood glucose could go very low very quickly. So sometimes I feel like it's just a little bit too dangerous to make such a quick transition. So that's number one from a medical perspective. From a logistical perspective, it can be kind of challenging to figure out like what are the foods I'm going to be eating and what am I not going to be eating? How do I go to the grocery store? What do I shop? What do I make? What do I cook? How much do I eat? There's so many questions that pop up. And therefore, giving yourself the time to make the transition, I think, is a smarter idea. So when we teach people how to adopt this method, or not even necessarily just for glucose, but even if it's cholesterol lowering, blood pressure lowering, inflammation lowering in general, we work them through a step-by-step process that quite honestly could take up to like 3 months to execute. And so we are purposefully and intentionally slow because we want to change biological systems relatively slowly. So to answer your question, if you were to do this overnight, expect that your blood glucose would go very low within 48 hours. That's almost every single time. Okay. Your blood glucose could drop by anywhere as much as like as little as 30 points, as much as like 100 points within 48 hours. Okay. It's that powerful. If you made the transition slower and did it like meal by meal, meaning Week 1, change your breakfast only. Week 2, now begin to change your lunch. Week 3, now begin to change your dinner. Week 4, put it all together and start to develop a routine, right? If you did it that way, then within a 4-week period, you're giving yourself a little bit more breathing room. You're still going to get to a point where your blood glucose is significantly more controllable and you don't have as much of a risk for hypoglycemia.
And that's why in your book, you say that's why you suggest starting with breakfast, then lunch, and then dinner. Now it all makes sense.
Yeah, exactly right. It's like, truth be told, it was just like, there's no reason why you have to start with breakfast. Like you could decide, oh, I'm going to start with dinner and then I'm going to do lunch. I was just trying to think of a way to make it practical. That's where it came from. And then when we started applying that methodology to people, it started working very well. And I was like, all right, cool. So this actually is doable and it actually has a really powerful effect.
So 2 other questions. Number 1, what happens if you go out to eat? Because like we live in a real life, practical, like what do you eat when you go out to eat? How do you make this doable when you go out to eat?
Allie, hey, sorry, give me just 1 second here.
Yeah, your dog has the same name as me, which is hilarious.
That's right. Allie.
And guys, I'm trying to get to all your questions, so feel free to keep putting them in the chat.
Okay, sorry, just so you guys know, I have to leave in like 5 minutes.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Okay, remind me the question.
So when you go out to eat, what do you eat?
Okay, so when I go out to eat, it can be challenging. Number 1, I don't love eating salads outside because they're boring. So I try not to do that. You go to Thai food, you can get green papaya salads, which are actually pretty flavorful and pretty tasty. And you can also get those rice paper wraps with a bunch of stuff on the inside. It doesn't have that many calories. I generally go out and get smoothie bowls, acai bowls. Any kind of smoothie place is great. If you can go and find a place that gets you some type of vegetable style wrap, even if it has a little tortilla on the outside, don't overstress it. It's okay. But oftentimes when we go out to eat, I bring food along with me. So like I will order something at the restaurant, just so I'm not totally weird. But I will also bring a bowl of black beans, quinoa, and tomatoes or something that's pre-made. I'll literally bring it in a Tupperware container and I'll put it into my bag. And then when everybody's eating food, I'm like, here we go. And I break out the Tupperware and I just eat it alongside the other food that I've ordered. And it seems to work out quite fine.
That's a great question. And then someone asked specifically if they have blood sugar readings in the 300s, or 400s, should they make the transition slower or faster?
Okay, so first things first, if your blood glucose is in the 300s or 400s, that usually means that you're in this thing called DKA, which is diabetic ketoacidosis, okay? It can be a relatively dangerous place to be, okay? So first things first, I would seek medical attention. Okay? I'm not trying to be alarmist here, but 300s and 400s, those are very high numbers. And when you're in diabetic ketoacidosis, you can be extremely dehydrated. A lot of things can go wrong pretty quickly. So that's number 1. Number 2, it would make sense to make the transition, I would say, not faster. So my actual real response is go to the hospital or pick up the phone and call a doctor and get a doctor who knows food and do it with their supervision. That's what I would suggest.
And then what if when you eat oatmeal and fruit, you get sleepy? Does that just mean that you're getting a blood sugar spike? And so you have to make sure your overall fat is low? And do you feel like everyone should eat like this? Those are kind of my last 2 questions.
Okay, cool. Should everyone eat like this? In an ideal world, I would say everybody would benefit from eating a strongly plant-based diet. The only change that I would make between those people living with pre-existing blood glucose dysregulation or pre-existing cholesterol dysregulation or pre-existing blood pressure dysregulation, meaning high blood pressure, high blood glucose, or high cholesterol, then keep your fat intake to 30 grams or less. If you do not have any of those pre-existing conditions, then it would be okay to allow your fat intake to go just a little bit higher, maybe up to like 40 grams, 45 grams, something like that per day. You don't need to be as stringent about it. But still, I do believe that most of the world, if not everybody, would benefit from eating a strongly plant-based diet, if not fully plant-based diet, with the smallest amount of refined anything possible.
Yeah. And then if someone's getting sleepy when they're eating oatmeal or fruit, what does that usually mean?
It's a great question. Is that at the beginning of the day, middle of the day, end of the day?
I'm guessing when I eat high carb, low fat, a meal like oatmeal with fruit will get me sleepy.
Okay. So I'm going to throw out a couple of guesses here. If that's an isolated meal, meaning if you're eating high carbohydrate breakfast, but then your lunch and dinner tend to be low carb, high fat, the difference between what's happening at breakfast and what's happening at lunch and dinner could be causing your brain to do some funny things. So that'll be number 1. Number 2, oatmeal can be a very problematic food for a lot of people, myself included. When I eat rolled oats, my glucose does weird things. So if it's rolled oats that you are eating, like old-fashioned oats, then you can also eat steel-cut oats that are going to be much easier to, much more gentle on your blood glucose. And then if you want to go one step higher, you could also go to oat groats, which are the least processed type of oat. And that's going to be the gentlest on your blood glucose. That could also have an effect on how your brain responds to it. So I would experiment with that. But if those forms of oatmeal also cause problems, then ditch the oatmeal and go for something that's a little bit slower to digest. So foods that are slower to digest that are worth experimenting around with are any version of squash, believe it or not. Spaghetti squash, butternut squash, acorn squash. I'm going to throw quinoa in that category. We often tell people to stop eating quinoa at dinner and start eating it at breakfast. And when they make that transition, all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, my glucose is so much more controllable. And it seems to be repeated in a lot of people. Okay. So slower digesting carbohydrates like the ones I just mentioned are likely to maybe cause less of the sort of the sleepiness if it truly is a blood glucose problem.
Cool. Awesome. And the last question, someone said the best way to control, I'm guessing control of sugar. What about sugar cravings? What do you do? They just go away.
Oh, yeah, good question. Okay, that's a great question. Sugar cravings subside when you eat sweet flavors. Okay, so this is something that maybe we didn't emphasize as much in the book as we could have. But a lot of times people are like, oh my God, I have such a sweet tooth. I need sugar. I'm like, hold on, stop. You don't need sugar. Nobody needs sugar, as in like white table sugar. Okay, that is a man-made hyper-processed food. Not a single human being technically needs white table sugar in their diet. What your brain is asking for is glucose, because your brain is a glucose machine. Your brain can literally only use glucose as a fuel. So if you are feeling symptoms of hypoglycemia, that's literally because your brain is like, warning, 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 put glucose in me now. Okay. So to get glucose, the simplest places to get glucose are from fruits because they're readily available, easily digestible packets of both glucose and fructose. And when you eat a high fruit diet, specifically high fruit in the morning, then your sugar cravings in the evening tend to go down.
Bizarre.
What's that?
That's bizarre. I had no idea.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. So one thing is front load sweet flavors at the beginning of the day, and then that will relieve the pressure that you often may experience with needing and wanting sugar and sweet things at the end of the day. That's definitely something we're trying. Option number 2, go to the store and buy these things called medjool dates. You haven't been eating them. It's like, not only are they rocket fuel, but the sweet flavor from even just 1 or 2 medjool dates is like candy. It's the most incredible thing around. So if you really, really do have a strong sugar craving, eat 1 or 2 dates and it should kill it. It's very simple.
My friend just taught me the trick of opening up a date and cutting a strawberry in half and putting a strawberry in the middle of a date and then closing it. It's like a chocolate covered strawberry.
Oh, yeah.
It's like amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a great idea.
Try it out. It's so good. I was shocked. It's so good. Well, thank you so much for spending this hour with us. This was so informative. It was so helpful. I think I learned a ton. I know they did too. Can you tell us more about where, if anyone wants to work with you one-on-one, how can they reach out to you? How can they do that if they want more help and support from you and your wife?
Awesome. Sure. Here's what we do. Let me share my screen with you real quick. Go here. I'll drop this in the chat box, but it's basically evolutionhealth.co. Okay. So that's my beautiful wife, Kylie. Go to this website and then enter your name and email address right here. And I'll send you a nice little gift, which is basically like a 14-day insulin sensitivity jumpstart guide. Here, if you get on our email list, we're constantly sending out, what I'm trying to do is send out the highest quality research-based information possible. And I spend a lot of time doing this stuff and I really, really, really like it. So if you like research and you really want to understand the sort of complexity of nutrition, but in an easily readable way, enter your name and email address here. And then if anybody is interested in actually getting a coaching program, we would love to see if we can help you. So you can just click on that green button and you can just get on our calendar. I will personally talk with you, try and learn everything I possibly can about you and see if you're a good fit and somebody that we might be able to help. Our coaching program is, I would say, ruthlessly effective simply because a lot of the stuff that I've talked about today and a lot of the principles, like the actual science, we go by the scientific method every single time and it works very well. So if we can help you out, just let us know. We're here to help.
That's cool. That's so cool. And just in case you guys didn't know, Cyrus has resigned from Mastering Diabetes. And so he has his own program. And it's kind of amazing because in the past, if you joined Mastering Diabetes, no one could actually work with you. But now they can work with you in a more direct way with you and your wife.
Right. You got it. Exactly right. Because Mastering Diabetes got to a point where we were serving so many clients that part of the reason why I left is because I had gotten distanced so far from the people that we were actually trying to help. I didn't know the names of anybody. I wasn't seeing faces anymore. And I was like, oh my God, this is not what I want to be doing. Now it's a much more personal feel, and this is what we love to do.
That's awesome. Well, you're amazing. You've been such an amazing friend, and I'm so grateful that you came to talk with us about your book, and it's just so helpful. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Amazing. Thank you for the invitation, Allie. I really appreciate it.
And tell your wife, tell Kylie hi for me. She's awesome.
Okay, will do. Thank you all for being here today. It was great to see you guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for listening to Eat Meat Sparingly, a Word of Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Allie Essig. And if you need more help and support with transitioning to eating more plants so you can lose weight and improve your gut health and just reduce your risk of chronic disease, then make sure to check out my PlantWhys membership. That's PlantWhys, because I like to teach the why behind eating more plants. But if all you need is just a couple more delicious recipes that feed your family and everyone loves, and not to mention super simple and easy, then make sure to check out my YouTube channel, which is also PlantWhys, PlantWhys. Hope to see you there.